my name is Lauren Boone from NOI Education Services, and today we are continuing our talk on the new RTO standards. And of course, I'm going to be talking about assessment. Now, for those of you that have been following me for years, you'll know that assessment is something that is near and dear to my heart. It is something that I am very, very passionate about. And obviously, it's actually how NOI got started. We started doing bespoke assessments. It's still a big part of our business. Making sure that we provide really beautiful contextualized assessments designed for the cohort, designed for the delivery model, designed for the state that is being delivered to, really making sure that the assessment matches the learner. And that's kind of one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. But what we're really going to be talking about is we're going to be talking more broadly about how we go about getting fair and consistent results within our assessment system. And we're going to be talking about that in context of the new RTO standards. Now, for those of you that have been under a rock, we do have a new set of RTO standards that are coming out. They will go into effect, as far as we know at this point in time, on the 1st of the 7th, 2025. I will preface that by saying we do not have the legal instrument that actually allows ASWA to monitor against them. Now, the reason for this is that there are several stages that we go through when we get a new set of standards. One of the things that needs to happen is that those standards, which is the outcome guidance, the ASWA guides, and everything like that, they go into a process where they will become the legal instrument. The legal instrument has not yet been released in within our Australian legislative system. It's got to be proposed, it's got to be debated, ratified, and approved by our government so that it can come into effect from the 1st of the 7th. ASWA is only able to legislate and audit against one legal instrument at a time. So the timing of us being able to get all of this in place is very small at this particular point in time. My gut instinct is starting to tell me that we're probably going to be looking closer to September, October time, potentially even pushing out to 1/1/26. But regardless, we all need to be working towards 1/7/25 at the moment. And if you haven't started updating your policies and preparing yourself for the new system, then that's definitely something that you should be doing. But you are watching my channel, which means you probably know all of this and you are getting ready for this process as we speak. The current standards, we've got standard 1.8, which is all about assessment, and then 1.9 to 1.11 is all in and around our validation. Under the new standards, we've got 1.3 is about the assessment system, 1.4 really focuses on the principles of assessment, rules of evidence, and 1.5 talks about validation. And those are the standards that we're going to be addressing across this series. So I wanted to start by talking about the, for those of you that haven't seen it, and I will link to it in the bottom, the outcome standards policy guidance. This was released by DWA. We also obviously have the ASWA guides that are starting to come out as well. And we've got the draft policy outcomes, compliance requirements, and credential policy itself as well. So there is actually a wealth of documents that's available for RTOs to be able to understand what this means, what the interpretation of it is going to likely to be. And how you can start to go about preparing to be able to demonstrate compliance with it. So with the intent of standard 1.3, under the outcome standards policy guidance, they kind of talk about what the intent of each of these standards are. So under 1.3 it says training products include performance criteria to reflect industry needs. These are specified in units of competency and all requirements of the unit must be demonstrated. While RTOs may deliver training and build student competency in a variety of ways, it's important that students can demonstrate competency in a consistent, reliable, and verifiable way. And I think that verifiable is a really important word because quite often when we go out and we do audits, what we will often see is that the assessment design allows the student to demonstrate that competency and for that to be viewed by the assessor. However, it's not documented anywhere. So, we see really terrible student observations. We see a lack of observations. We see observations that have been deferred to the workplace and are not actually observed by anybody who holds a TAE, or even who necessarily holds the unit of competency and, has verifiable, is verifiably competent and current under the RTO standards. So that word verifiable is really, really important. Where is the actual evidence that the student can do X, Y, and Z? RTOs that are responsible for certifying the competence of individuals, and that is ultimately what RTOs are. We are responsible for verifying competence, for certifying competence, ensuring that the certification is only issued to a student who the RTO is assessed as meeting the requirements. Competency can be achieved through training delivered by the RTO or skills acquired elsewhere. That builds into things like offering RPL, being able to offer recognition of skills, credit transfer, being able to provide students, like if they've been working in a workplace, being able to, recognize hours that they've undertaken in the workplace, things like that. So 1.3 is that RTOs must have a fit for purpose assessment system. Now, there's 3 points under here. A is that it has to be consistent with the requirements of the training product. This is very, very standard. There is nothing new about this. This is absolutely in the standards now. It has been for as long as I've been in the sector. You have to make sure you're meeting your training products. That ultimately boils down to your mapping guide and making sure that your assessment is mapped to every component of that mapping guide. Assessment tools are reviewed prior to use to ensure assessment can be conducted consistent with the principles of assessment rules of evidence. This is new. There was an intent of this within the old standards. However, it's very explicit in these standards. And my belief is that it's very explicit within these standards because if you are an RTO and you go out and you purchase commercially available assessment tools, and you undertake no process to contextualize, to check that they are fit for purpose, to make sure that they are compliant to the principles of assessment rules of evidence, okay, that's on you. That is your fault as the RTO. I don't care how many tens of thousands of dollars you spent, okay? You have a responsibility to check that the tools are compliant. The fact that the company says that they're compliant means nothing. You have a responsibility to do that, okay? Now, I've railed about this for so many times. There are so many assessment tools out there that can be purchased that are not compliant. Now, in some cases, there is a reason why they are not compliant, and the companies will very explicitly say that you have a responsibility to contextualize when you bring it in. Other assessment tools that I've seen that are available for commercial purchase give an option for 2 forms of assessment, one for assessment evidence to be collected in the workplace and one for assessment evidence to be collected in simulation. And I've seen RTOs whack the entire tool into their learner management system, like Accelerator or something like that. And the assessment tool then becomes so big, right, and so convoluted because they haven't separated it out and they're giving all of the students everything in one hit. The students get overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, and they check out, okay? You can have assessment tools that are compliant that are not usable. You can have assessment tools that are usable that are not compliant, okay? And all manner of those are available to be commercially purchased out there at the moment, okay? Not all commercial providers will offer you a guarantee that if it's found non-compliant at a regulator audit, that they will fix it at their cost. Many of them do have a requirement in their clause that it is your responsibility to contextualize, and if you fail to contextualize and it doesn't pass audit, then again, that's your fault, okay? So please do not go out there and buy materials and chuck them straight into your LMS without taking them through some sort of check process. Under the new standards, that will be a clear breach of standard 1.3b, okay? And I think this is going to be a very big one that the regulator is going to hit, because I see it time and time and time and time and time and time again. RTOs will spend tens of thousands of dollars on training materials and assessment. They will whack straight into their system, and then they will come to me 6 months later going, oh, but we failed an audit. Oh, we're getting a 0% completion rate. Oh, but, it failed in our validation sessions. What do we do now? And I'm like, why didn't you not test this beforehand? Okay. I'm really sorry, guys. This is very, very straightforward. It's now directly in the standards. You have to check your assessment tools prior to use, okay? And the outcome of review then informs any necessary change. That's 1.3C. The outcome of the review informs any necessary change. So this is the pre-validation process prior to rolling out your tools, okay? No excuse, check your tools before you deliver them, make sure that they're actually compliant. Okay, going on to 1.4, as I said, 1.4 is really just a continuation of 1.8, which is the assessment system is conducted in a fair and appropriate way, and it really correlates to the principles of assessment, rules of evidence. Now, the principles of assessment and the rules of evidence have not changed. We've still got fairness, flexity, validity, reliability, and then validity again, sufficiency, authenticity, and currency. Okay. There's a slight change in the definitions. I think that's probably just more of a clarification, to be honest, than anything. The one thing I will say is that under the old standards, it says like the onus of the rules of evidence is probably more clearly on the assessor, although within the new standards, 6 to 1, half dozen the other, principles of assessment fall back to the RTO. Rules of evidence fall on the assessor. This is something I've been telling you guys as assessors for years. If you are a vet trainer and assessor, okay, when it comes to the principles of assessment, that falls to the policies and procedures and the assessment tool design, that's on the RTO. But when it comes to is the student competent, you as the assessor holding the TAE and holding the relevant industry skills and competencies you are the person that is determining competency. Okay. The language of the standards mirrors that. Okay. Assessors make individual assessment judgments that are justified based on the rules of evidence. The assessment evidence assures the assessor that the vet student has the skills and knowledge. The quality, quantity, relevance of assessment evidence enables a judgment of competency to be made. The assessment evidence presented is the student's own work, and the assessment evidence demonstrates the current skills and knowledge of the vet student. Okay? The language is in and around the assessor. You as the assessor have that responsibility. Here are things that are not an excuse for you as an assessor. Okay? The assessment tool is non-compliant. You know the assessment tool is non-compliant. You have a responsibility to tell the RTO the assessment tool is not compliant. It doesn't allow me to collect the evidence. Okay? You are not employed at the rates that you guys are employed at, okay, to play dumb. Okay, controversial as that may seem, right? Most trainers, you guys are on anywhere from $40 an hour and above. Okay, I know many, many trainers who are on 6 figures as full-time trainers. Okay, you cannot be getting a 6-figure wage and then play dumb and go, ooh. Okay, you as the assessor have a responsibility. And if we want to improve our industry, I'm sorry, but assessors, you guys have got to start pushing back and saying the assessment tool is not compliant. Okay, it doesn't cover this. It doesn't, and really basic things, guys. Okay, if it is asking you to collect all of your practical evidence and that all that practical evidence gets signed off by a third party and you don't physically see the person doing the skill, you are not meeting your requirements. Your RTO is not meeting your requirements, but you are also not meeting your requirements. And when that student goes out and hurts themselves after you have certified them to say that they can do that skill safely, okay, and they then go out and hurt themselves, it is not just the RTO that safe work is going to come back on. It is you as the assessor, because you are the one that said that they were competent to do the skill safely. So when they go out and chop off their hand because they put it into a machine that they weren't supposed to, 6 months after they got credentialed, when they go out and they put children at risk in childcare, when they go out and they don't use good hygiene and it results in several old people, you know, passing away or ending up hospitalized, okay, that's on you. You have the responsibility under the RTO standard. I'm really sorry. but that's what you take on when you become a trainer and assessor. Okay, that's why you guys get paid what we get paid. All right, you don't do the assessment design. Okay, you train and you assess. Those are your responsibilities. And under the RTO standards, assessors have very clear responsibilities. And RTOs, when your trainer and assessor very clearly says, this is not compliant, okay, you as the RTO manager, you as the RTO compliance officer, you have a responsibility to back your trainers and assessors, review the assessment tools, and make a proper determination as to whether or not you are actually collecting compliant evidence. Okay? If you decide to knowingly ignore your trainer and assessors, you deserve to be reported to ASPA. That's the reality of it. Okay? RTOs should always be investing in updating their training and assessment materials. I do not know a single quality RTO that is not consistently invested in undertaking validation, updating their training and assessment materials. Okay? If you haven't bothered doing that in 5 years, if you haven't bothered doing that in a couple of years, if you're not undertaking validations, if you are not updating your training and assessment materials, right? If you're not investing in that in any way, shape, or form, you are probably not a quality RTO. That's the reality. Okay? Under the new standards, this is very, very clear. Under the old standards, this part is very, very clear. Assessment design is on the RTO. You have to provide your assessors with compliant tools. Assessors, you have to use those tools compliantly. You have to see the skills, okay? I cannot get over the amount of trainers and assessors that I work with where they are okay with signing off competency when they have not observed the student doing the skill, doing the thing. You have to see the student doing the thing, okay? This is absolutely crucial to that. Absolutely crucial to that. All right. 1.5 then goes into how we actually go about doing validation. We're going to cover this one in a lot more detail as we continue to go through this. I want to talk about how we go about doing validation, what I think are the best methods for doing validation, and then also what we do once validation is shown. But when we come to being fair and consistent in our results, making sure that we've got that process in place where we have tools that everyone uses and where we're talking about how we're using the tools on a regular basis and making sure that all of our trainers and assessors have access to be able to talk to each other, work with each other so that they can make sure that what we've got is the right system. That's what we want to be working towards. Okay. That's the first step in achieving fair and consistent results. So guys, if you've enjoyed me ranting, this has been a little bit of a ranting one. It is based on the fact, it's based on what we see all the time. There's a massive frustration because it's not actually that hard. If you think it is that hard, if you really do believe that creating good compliant assessments is that hard, we've got a big series on like how to design assessments, how to create really good practicals. The way that GPT works nowadays, you know, it's really easy to create really good benchmarks that make sense, that describe what the assessor should be seeing. So creating those observation checklists is very, very easy nowadays. You need to be making sure that you're addressing this. This is absolutely the heart of the sector. If you don't meet 1.8 under the old standards, if you don't meet 1.3, 1.4 under the new standards, everything cascades from there. If your assessment's non-compliant, your assessment evidence is non-compliant, the certification process that you've got is non-compliant, your QA process is non-compliant, your TAS is non-compliant. You know, this is the primary domino that then cascades over everything else. So getting this part right, and it's very rarely the theory assessments, it's almost always the practicals that I see this falls down on. You have to get your practical assessments correct. You have to be able to figure out how you're capturing those skills, the skills for that particular unit, and how you're evidencing and being able to verify those skills, okay, before you go about deeming competency. Just absolutely crucial to our sector. I hope you guys want to stay around for part two. Part two is going to be talking about actually how we set up our validation structures and some of the best ways to be able to do that. We will incorporate AI as part of that discussion as well, because there's definitely some interesting things that AI is doing nowadays and that we're utilizing AI for as part of that validation process. I hope you guys have found this interesting. My name is Lauren Boone for NOI Education Services. I hope you guys have a great day.